My fiancé said my maid of honor thinks you are not good enough. I stayed silent, but inside, my world cracked. The words hung in the air like smoke, impossible to breathe in, yet impossible to ignore. She said it so casually, almost like she was talking about the weather, as if the judgment of her maid of honor meant more than the man she had promised to marry. I sat there, staring at her, waiting for her to laugh or take it back. But she didn't. She just looked at her phone, scrolling with that same detached expression she always wore when she didn't want to meet my eyes. My chest felt tight, like someone had punched me straight in the ribs. I thought about everything I had given up for her. The late nights at work, the extra shifts, the compromises I made so she could chase her dreams. I thought about the ring on her finger, the one I worked overtime to afford, and the way she cried when I proposed, swearing I was the best thing that had ever happened to her. Now, all it took was her maid of honor whispering poison in her ear for her to dismiss me like I was nothing. But instead of exploding, instead of defending myself, I stayed silent. My silence wasn't weakness. It was the moment I decided to stop fighting for her approval. It was the moment I started paying attention, really paying attention, to the cracks in the love I thought we had. She didn't notice my silence, or maybe she didn't care. She just kept talking about wedding plans, about colors, about her friend's suggestions. It was like I wasn't even in the room anymore. Every word she spoke felt like confirmation of something I didn't want to admit. She valued her maid of honor's opinion more than she valued mine. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her words replayed in my head, louder and sharper each time. Not good enough. The phrase became a drumbeat in my skull. I thought about the countless times she compared me to other men. The subtle digs, the little jokes at my expense, the way she would sometimes sigh when I didn't react the way she wanted. I had brushed it all off before, convincing myself she was just stressed or tired. But this time, it wasn't stress. It wasn't exhaustion. It was truth, her truth. I remembered the sacrifices I had made, how I sold my car to help her cover tuition, how I skipped family gatherings to support her career, how I ignored the loneliness I felt when she would stay out late with friends. And still, in her eyes, I wasn't enough. Not because of me, but because her maid of honor said so. I clenched my fists under the blanket that night. My silence wasn't cowardice. It was resolve. I decided in that moment that if she wanted to measure my worth by her friend's standards, I wouldn't argue. I would let her believe whatever she wanted, because I had something she didn't expect. I had her own words. And if she thought I wasn't good enough, soon she'd see just how wrong she was. That was the seed of my plan. I reflect on the slow breakdown of our engagement. At first, I thought it was just stress, just the pressure of wedding planning. Everyone says planning a wedding can strain a couple, right? But for us, it wasn't just strain, it was cracks becoming fractures, and those fractures were always pushed wider by her maid of honor. It started with small digs. My fiancé would joke about how I wasn't as ambitious as her friend's husband, or how I didn't dress as sharply as the guys her friend thought were attractive. They were little comments tossed like pebbles, but each one left a bruise. I laughed them off, but deep down I felt the sting. Slowly, I began to realize those weren't just jokes. They were her way of telling me I didn't measure up. Not to her standards, but to her friend's approval. Wedding planning only made it worse. Every decision seemed to come down to her and her maid of honor. The flowers, the venue, even the color of the suits. It was all debated and decided without me. I was just there. An extra body, the groom in name only. I remember sitting at the table one evening as they debated cake flavors over the phone. She never even asked me what I wanted. I sat in silence, listening to her laugh at her friends' suggestions, and wondered why I was even there. In those quiet moments, when the laughter stopped and the house went still, I started to recall things she had told me before. Times when she messaged me late at night, venting about her maid of honor, complaining that she was jealous, that she judged her constantly, that she thrived on gossip and drama. I remember one text so clearly. She said, "Sometimes I feel like she doesn't even want me to be happy unless I'm miserable like her." And yet here we were, my fiancé clinging to every word that same friend said, letting her shape the entire course of our relationship. It was like she forgot all those complaints, like she had erased her own doubts, and now I was the one left doubting everything. The realization hit me slowly but painfully. My fiancé played both sides. To me, she vented about her maid of honor. To her maid of honor, she belittled me. I was caught in the middle of a game I didn't even know I was playing. That's when the seeds of doubt started to grow into something bigger. I began to notice every detail. Every time she dismissed my opinion with a laugh, every time she looked at her phone before answering me, every time she compared me to someone else. I stopped brushing it off. I started watching. And more importantly, I started collecting proof. I scrolled back through our old messages, the complaints, the screenshots, the things she said about her best friend. They were still there, hidden but undeniable. She thought I had forgotten. She thought I didn't pay attention. But I did. And with every message I found, with every contradiction she had created, my resolve hardened. She had no idea, but the silence I gave her was not surrender. It was preparation. She thought she was in control, that she could undermine me without consequence. But I was building something quietly, piece by piece, that would turn her own words against her. And soon, both she and her maid of honor would see the truth. The tension escalates. I tried to confront the small issues, gently at first. I told her how the constant comparisons hurt, how I felt like her friend's opinion mattered more than mine. She barely looked up from her phone and sighed, "You're overreacting. Stop making everything a big deal." Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. It wasn't just dismissal. It was a declaration that my feelings no longer mattered in this relationship. After that, I noticed a shift. She became more distant, colder. She'd stay glued to her phone during dinners, laughing at messages I wasn't a part of. When I asked who it was, she'd shrug and say, "Just her," like that explained everything. And her maid of honor? She grew bolder too. At gatherings, she'd make sly remarks about me right in front of everyone, tiny little barbs wrapped in fake smiles. Things like, "You're lucky she even puts up with you," followed by laughter that everyone assumed was a joke. But I heard the venom in her voice. Sometimes it wasn't even subtle. She'd lean in and whisper things I was meant to hear, words that stung like poison. "She deserves better. You'll never keep her happy." And each time I looked at my fiancée, expecting her to defend me, to shut her friend down. But she never did. She just stood there, silent, complicit, maybe even amused. In those moments, my mind would flash back to the messages I had saved. The late-night rants where my fiancé called this same friend controlling, manipulative, and toxic. I could still see the words on my phone screen burned into my memory. She once told me, "Sometimes I wish she'd just stay out of my life. She always wants to control me." And yet here she was, letting that same person control everything. Our relationship, our future, even the way she looked at me. The frustration grew heavier every day. It wasn't just her friend mocking me anymore, it was her allowing it. It was her pretending loyalty while standing shoulder to shoulder with someone who actively tried to tear me down. I started to realize that the betrayal wasn't just coming from her maid of honor. It was coming from her too. From the silence she gave me when I needed support. From the way she chose someone else's words over mine. From the trust I thought we had, now unraveling thread by thread. On the outside, I stayed silent. I played the role of the calm, patient fiancé, but inside I was boiling. My blood burned every time I heard her laugh at my expense, every time she brushed me off like I was nothing more than a nuisance. Every time I caught the smug look on her friend's face, knowing she had the upper hand. They thought my silence was weakness. They thought my quiet was submission. But it wasn't. It was the calm before the storm, and while they grew comfortable mocking me, I was holding on to the very evidence that would expose them both. The betrayal had gone too far, and soon the weight of their own words would come crashing down on them. The breaking point came faster than I expected. We were sitting in the living room, trying to go over some last-minute wedding details. I had been quiet most of the evening, just listening, but her maid of honor couldn't resist her usual digs. She leaned back, smirked, and said, "Honestly, I still don't know why you're marrying him. You deserve someone better." I looked at my fiancée, waiting, hoping for her to defend me. But instead she laughed, a sharp, careless laugh that sliced through me. "Well," she said, "maybe she's right." The words landed like a blade in my chest. There it was, the confirmation of everything I had been dreading. She wasn't just letting her friend disrespect me, she was joining in. That night, as they both sat there mocking me, I realized I was done being silent in the shadows. Enough was enough. I stood up slowly, pulled out my phone, and scrolled through the folder I had been keeping. The screenshots, the late-night rants, her words, her real feelings about her so-called best friend. My fiancée frowned when she saw my face change. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice uneasy. I ignored her and looked directly at her maid of honor. Calm, cold. "You know," I said, "it's funny how close you think the two of you are. But I wonder if you'd feel the same after reading what she's really said about you." Before either of them could react, I placed my phone on the table and opened the first message. The maid of honor leaned forward, eyes narrowing, and then I watched her expression twist as she read. "She's jealous of everything I have. She acts like she owns me. Sometimes I only keep her around for appearances. It's easier than cutting her off." Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. My fiancée reached out to grab my phone, but it was too late. Her maid of honor was already shaking with fury. "You said this?" she demanded, her voice rising. "You called me jealous? You called me toxic? After everything I've done for you?" My fiancé stammered, hands trembling. "It's not what it looks like. I didn't mean..." But her friend wasn't listening. She was beyond reason now, humiliated, betrayed. The fight erupted like a firestorm. Accusations flew back and forth, sharp and venomous. Years of suppressed resentment burst into the open. "You used me. You controlled me. You never even liked me. You're pathetic without me." I sat back, watching the mask of their friendship crumble, piece by piece. These two women who had stood united against me were now tearing each other apart with words sharper than knives. The alliance they built on mockery and manipulation collapsed in minutes. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel powerless. I didn't feel small. My silence, the patience they mistook for weakness, had turned into my greatest weapon. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't begged. I hadn't fought. I had simply let the truth speak for itself. And the truth was chaos. The aftermath was like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. The screaming match between my fiancée and her maid of honor ended with silence so thick it felt like the air itself had been torn apart. Her friend stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. For the first time, I saw fear in my fiancée's eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of losing control. She turned on me instantly, voice sharp and trembling. "How could you do that? How could you embarrass me like that?" I just stared at her. After everything, that was her reaction. Not regret, not apology, just blame. Even in ruin, she couldn't see her own hand in it. The days that followed were a blur of chaos. Her maid of honor cut all ties, making it clear she wouldn't be part of the wedding anymore. And with her gone, everything began to unravel. The planning halted. The vendors started calling with cancellations. Relatives whispered, confused and curious, wondering what had happened. And my fiancé, once so confident, so smug, was suddenly scrambling to hold everything together. But it was useless. The truth had poisoned it all. Everyone could see it now, the cracks in her character. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the loyal bride. She was the one who betrayed, who lied, who mocked the very people closest to her. She tried to shift the blame onto me. If you hadn't shown her those messages, none of this would have happened. But I wasn't moved. I didn't shout back. I didn't argue. I just looked at her, calm and hollow, and said, "No. This happened because of what you said, because of who you are." That silence, my silence, was louder than any fight could ever be. In the following days, the texts started pouring in, long paragraphs, apologies laced with excuses. "I didn't mean it like that. You shouldn't have taken it seriously. I was stressed about the wedding. Please don't leave me now." Each one felt weaker than the last. I read them, but I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because I finally understood something I had been blind to for too long. I was never the problem. She was. Her disloyalty, her arrogance, her two-faced nature. The wedding that once felt like the center of my life no longer existed. The plans were gone. The trust was gone. And most of all, the illusion I once clung to, that she truly loved me, was shattered forever. I didn't walk away in anger. I didn't storm out or slam doors. I walked away quietly, with finality. That was my closure. Not revenge, not screaming, not proving her wrong. Just the simple act of leaving, knowing I had seen her for who she really was. She begged for one more chance. But I didn't answer, because I didn't need her to admit what she had done. I didn't need her to say sorry. The truth was already written in her own words, in black and white, saved forever in those screenshots. And for the first time in months, I felt free. The wedding was over. But more importantly, so was my illusion of her love.